All right, folks, welcome back. This is the FMS preparation task for the pilot flying. So before we start, let's talk about some names, how we call things. So this unit here, it's called a Mcdu, multifunction control display unit. A lot of times you see people call it the FMGC or the FMS or the Mcdu. So Mcdu is basically a display. So if I break the Mcdu with a hammer, I didn't break the FMGC, I just broke the Mcdu, which is just a display. So we'll refer to this as the Mcdu from now on. There's some line select keys. So this is line select key 1 Lima, LSK 2 Lima, 3 Lima, 1 Romeo, 2 Romeo. So sometimes I'll say, hey guys, I'm pressing 3 Romeo as a short. There's several other buttons here. This is to control the brightness and also to turn on. So if you push dim and keep pushing, the Mcdu will turn off. So push BRT, which is brightness, up, and then it will turn on. Some things that are a little bit weird for the French: up is down, down is up for the A320. But when you go to the ACARS menu, then it's the American way of up is up, down is down. Right is right and left is left. At least that is true. So different than the 737 FMS. Other things here, you're gonna see that the north, east, south, and west are, has a white box around it. And some keys don't work. For example, where Mcdu might have ATC COM, but doesn't mean that feature is enabled. There's some annunciators here on the right, on top, and on the left as well. And this here, I believe, is just a sensor for brightness outside. You can see here on the left, there are sensors here on the PFD. There are sensors on the ND. So if you get the sun shining on it, it will automatically brighten up on you. Alright, so we're ready to start. First thing you're going to do is push the MCDU menu. And you're going to see here on 1 Lima, there's the FMGC. And then here on 3 Lima, there's AIDS and CFDS. And just a quick note, these things here don't exist in real life. This is just a submenu for FS Labs. So we're going to go ahead and push the FMGC, and then we're going to push data. Under data, the first thing on the FCOM is to check the engine and aircraft type. So you're going to go to aircraft status, and you're going to check to make sure the engine you have here is the engine you have on your aircraft. So this is an IAE engine on the 320. Second thing you're going to check, also, by the way, if you're still using paper for your performance, you might want to check this engine matches your performance book, the RTOW, I think it's called, takeoff performance. Second thing you're going to do is check the database validity. I just updated this today, and it's still valid, so until June 17th. Usually a few days prior, I think it's about a week prior, the next database is already available here on the bottom. Remember, you have to manually do this. And a quick note, if you're in flight, or if you already programmed your entire FMS and then, or Mcdu, if you change databases, it will dump everything you did. You're going to have to start over again. Quick note about change code. The Airbus default change code is ARM. Please don't mess with this on your airline. Engineering will not be happy with you. So, but ARM is the code. So let's say your paperwork says the idle is plus 1.5 and your perf is minus 1.2. This is what you would do, but that's not a pilot task. That's a mechanics task. Another note, anything that's green can't really change. Anything that's blue is you're supposed to fill it out. So we change here the code performance. What idle and perf means, that's way beyond the scope of this video. So we check the database, and now we're going to do a NAVS selection. So to do that, we push data, and then we go to GPS monitor. No, we don't. We push data, go to position monitor. Under position monitor, go to cell NAVS. So for example, we read the NOTAMs and Orman VOR is out of service. You would select Orman VOR, and let's say also Lakeland VOR is out of service. You would put it here, and that keeps the FMGC from using the VOR that's out of service to correct its position. But you're going to find out if you have GPS primary, you know, that's not going to make a single difference, but you're still supposed to put the VORs that are not working on the right. So once we're done with the NAVS selection, we're going to start the flight plan initialization. So that's under INIT. So these ember boxes, that's requesting that you fill it out. Blue you can change, doesn't mean you have to change, but you can. So let's fill it out here. We don't have a company route, so we're going to go from scratch. And again, that's not my toilet, that's FS Labs doing its own thing. So we're going to do a flight from Orlando to, let's see, I'm going to go today. Orlando to, let's do Newark. Okay, EWR. Put it here on the side. And our alternate, here in the US, and I think even Europe, if the weather is good at your destination or the forecast is good enough, you don't need an alternate, but just for the sake of it, let's put Boston as our alternate. Our flight number will be RAT 2552. And why is it important for you to put the right flight number here? Well, when you go to flight aware, it copies it from there. Whatever you put in here is what flight aware is going to show, and also air traffic control. If you have a mode S transponder, it's going to copy that information from there. Make sure you don't write something you don't want to be on flight aware forever. Cost index, that's a number that your airline will give you for that specific flight. So let's say my paperwork says B25. The higher the number, the faster you go, the more fuel you are going to burn, but the faster you get there. Cruise flight level, so let's say it's going to be flight level 370, and the standard temperature for this altitude is minus 56. Well, guess what? The tropopause is never that in real life. So your paperwork is going to say, hey, you know, it's summer, and the tropopause is really high, so you're going to put 55,000 feet here on the tropopause, and your paperwork says the temperature at 370 is going to be, you know, a little bit warmer than standard. So we're going to put minus 46. Ground temperature, I have not seen this in real life. At least all the Airbuses I've flown never had that. But let's say outside today here, about 30, 35 degrees. So that is completed. You might see this INIT request. That's if you have acres enabled. You just pull the entire flight plan from your AOC. We're not going to mess with that. So that first part is done. We're going to move along, and we're going to do the ATRS position initialization. Well, we moved the ATRS selectors to nav, and it didn't require any input from me. If you have an A3, I think the 318s or Airbuses without GPS, you need to tell, you know, where you're at right now. Well, because we have GPS, that information was already sent to the IRS and in aligned itself. So just want to make sure these numbers make sense. Make sure this number matches your gate. GPS is pretty precise. Some other Mcdus require you to put the position before you start the alignment process. So because we have GPS, we won't worry about it. once we're done with data, INIT, we're going to go to flight plan. And thing to remember for the order of how you program this, I'll write it down here. It's a diffsrip. So diffsrip. See if I can find a better place to write it. So diffs. That's it. Data, INIT, flight plan A, secondary flight plan, radio NAVS, INIT B, and the NPs for performance. So always remember diffsrip if you're lost in the middle of your programming. So here on flight plan A, what do we got? Our flight number. You use this quite a bit during the flight because you always forget who you are. So you just look up here, flight number 1252, and it has only your from, your to, no route, and if you go down, you're actually going to see Boston as your alternate. That's in there as well. So our job here is to put the route, and that's going to be in your paperwork. So let's see, we're going to take off from Orlando, departure. We're going to go take off 35 left, and we're going to be on the McCoy to departure. We're going to insert it. Now, if you want to look what it looks like before you insert it, I'm going to bring the ND up here. And let's see what it looks like. Plan. Zoom out so you say, okay, there's a runway. And it seems like it's just a heading, and then there's Guano as the intersection. Looks good. And you see from yellow, it's going to change color. Now it became green. So I'm going to be radar vector to Guano. So I'm going to leave that. Don't think you always have to delete a discontinuity. Sometimes you just have to leave the discontinuity there, especially here in the US where you get vectored a lot. Other places, the SID always takes you to the airway. That's not always the case. So after Guano, we're going to go to FEMON. So there's a few ways to put that. You can click on Guano and then put FEMON here as the next waypoint, but you're just wasting your time. You just put FEMON straight from the scratch pad. Alright, so we're going to zoom out a little bit. I see Guano, FEMON, that makes sense. And then from FEMON, we're going to join an airway. So I pushed 3 Lima Airways, and it's going to be Q87. We're going to put Q87. It's going to take me all the way to JROSS. So I'm going to type here JROSS. And it keeps making sense here on my ND. And I'm going to insert it. So, alright, after JROSS, I'm going to go to Florence, so FLO. And insert where the discontinuity is. Don't put it down here. Put it where the discontinuity is. And it's going to ask, hey, which of these Florences you want? Well, right now, because the ADERS or the IRS is aligned, it knows where you're at. So be very careful if you're building your flight plan with the ADERS still aligning, because it won't know where you're at and you might insert the wrong thing. So that's a risk that I've seen it happen. Alright, so we're going to insert this Florence. From here, we're going to join another airway. So we're going to go Airways, J55, and here's a feature that not many pilots know about. It's called stringing. You don't have to insert the exit waypoint if you're joining another airway that crosses J55. So let's hope FS Lab simulates that. So J55 and J51, they join each other. So I'm just going to put J51. Oh, and guess what? FS Lab is good. So TUBAS is where we connect. So you see automatically that fills that out. And J51, we're going to FAK. Now, if you have, 20 airways, that will save you a lot of time from inserting these, so you don't have to fill out the right side. I call that stringing. All right, FAC, insert. You can keep scrolling it down, make sure it still makes sense. Yeah, it does. And then from FAK, we're going to join an arrival. So we're going to put Newark. We're going to land 4 left. We're hoping to. And then Filbo 3. And that's a transition. We're going to insert it. And that's it. So let's check our flight plan. So to do that, you have to come here in the EFIS control panel and leave it. See, here's ARC, nav, ARC, leave it in plan. And to zoom in, use this push button here, or the selector. So we got Orlando 35 left, 500 feet. We're going to keep a straight out heading. And then there's going to be vectors to Guano. And then FEMON. Now you might ask, well, what's this red line doing here on the ND? Well, this line is normal because it's a runway heading. It just keeps going and going and going indefinitely, so it's not interfering with your flight plan. So we got VIAP. And if you notice this number here, that's your track from, Susie to Talon and how many miles you have. And you can check that against your flight or against your paperwork to make sure these match. So from Talon to JROSS, it's track 033, 47 miles. JROSS to Florence, change the color to yellow, make it easier to see. So from JROSS to Florence, it's 103 miles on a track of 035. And all of this should match very closely to your paperwork. And we keep looking, we're looking for discontinuities that don't make sense. Distances match. What I have on my screen matches. And now you're starting to have some altitudes here on the right. Let's see, flight level 270. Now, flight level 270 is not shown here in FUBR because constraints is not selected. So if you select constraints, and we're going to start seeing that those altitudes will show. But guess what? You get the altitudes, but you lose the track and distance. So if you're more worried about checking the altitudes, turn the constraints on. If you're worried about checking distances and tracks, make sure constraints are off. And all of this makes sense. And again, we have a discontinuity here. Why? Because after Filbo, you're under radar vectors. So just leave that there. Do not take the discontinuity, because if you do, we're going to have a line from here to here, and you might fly something that you don't have a clearance for. So just leave discontinuities alone when they make sense. And blue here is after you go around, which looks fine. You get your charts out. And now, from Newark to Boston, you have to build your flight plan as well, because you're not going to go direct. So if you just do this, that's pretty bad, because you're telling the FMGC that you're going to have a straight leg from Newark to Boston. So what we'll be doing, we're going to say Newark, since we're landing 4 left, we also would be, going around from 4 left. We wouldn't have a departure. We would insert it and arriving into Boston. Put an arrival. Let's say we're going to land 4 right on the Roebuck 3, coming from Merritt, and we would insert it. That looks a lot better. So when you have fuel prediction, it's realistic. And again, leave this discontinuity here, because you're probably going to be vectored from your go around to Merritt. So we are done here with the route. Now what we have to do is stay here and do winds. So, find a waypoint, FEMON, click on the right. So you have wind here, and there's a cruise wind, there's your climb out wind. Every time I push the up arrow, it's changing my fix. We got cruise wind, and then there's going to be climb winds and your descent wind. Well, if you have acres, it's great. You can just push it and it's going to work. Otherwise, you're going to have to do it manually. So let's say our paperwork says the winds will be 250 at 50 knots as we climb out through 15,000 feet. And as you keep climbing, it's going to switch a little bit to 300 at 100 knots at 28,000 feet. You're basically taking slices of the atmosphere to get your predictions correct. And then when you finally get to closer to your cruising altitude, so those are your winds. You can put in another one, and then next it's going to say, hey, the wind at FEMON will be 320 at 125, and you can put 38,000 feet, and it's going to propagate to other waypoints. So let's say the course of the wind changes significantly, or the speed changes significantly, you would update it. And also you want to insert winds above and below you, so you have decent predictions if you want to go up or down. The FMS can actually tell you if you're going to save fuel or not. So you would fill that out. You put one more, 330 at 150. Fly it low. And paperwork says that at FEMON it's going to be minus 48, 38,000 feet. And you can insert there, and let's say, not insert for me, so minus 0. Didn't do it. That's weird. You should try it. By app. It's 48. 0. Didn't take it. Sure what. And let's say at FOSI the wind changed significantly, so we're going to put 280 here at 100. And then this changed to 300 at 120. And why it's important for you to update this, because it's going to make a huge difference on your fuel prediction, especially if the winds are very strong. Alright, and then we have our descent winds, and then we would insert that. You got an idea of how that works. So we're done with the lateral revisions. So anything you do here on this side are lateral. Anything on this side is vertical. So we started by doing the lateral revision, and we inserted 3.5 left, McCoy 2, no transition, and Newark, same thing, the lateral revision, inserted ILS 4 left with Filbert 3, back transition for the ILS 4 left. So we're done with that. So once we're done with flight plan, we're going to go to secondary. Some airlines are going to make you initialize the same thing you just did, but returning. It's a lot easier just to copy everything on your active, and we're gonna say, okay, after Guano we're coming back to Orlando. So you can click Guano, I'm returning to Orlando, and we'll be landing 3.5 right, and or you can choose the best runway based on the winds. If I want to go back and forth here, I can push right and left. So let's say I inserted 3.5 right, it took me here, I didn't like it. I can just say, well, I actually want a longer runway. 36 right. There'll be no star because in my approach via, it's going to start here at tramp. It's already selected, and notice there's no confirmation. Stuff you do on the secondary does not require confirmation. Now I want to see if my secondary looks good for my return. So it's showing me taking off, going to guano, and then returning to tramp. If you don't like this 500 in manual, you can also delete it. Or let's say your company says, well, if you have an engine failure, you're going to go from MCO to on top of, Sanford Airport or some other VOR or anything. So you can just come here and say, okay, we're going to go Orlando, Sanford. You don't need to go to Guano. And then from Sanford, let's say they're going to tell you to go to some waypoint. Well, we're going to go Sanford Presque. You can do Sanford Presque. From Presque, we're going to do a hold, or better, from Presque, we're going to go to Bern. And at Bern, I want to get some holds inserted so I can get, the plane ready to go. And I want to hold facing, west. So my inbound course would be 270. I want to have 4-minute legs so the plane is not turning every minute. That's it. You can see it in white. I'm taking off, going on top of Sanford, then Presque, then Bern, doing holds, and then from Bern I'm going to tramp, Flosy, and I'm vectored. So that's the secondary. What you can also do is under performance, you can come here on next phase and leave everything ready to come back. So we said the altimeter was 3005. So 3005. It's 30 degrees outside. Wind is 350 at 10. And we're gonna land on full. And we pick up the charts and we see that our minimums are 236. And if we go around, my company policy is 1,000 feet for thrust reduction, 1,000 feet for acceleration, and if I'm single engine, it's 1590. Remember, these numbers, the airline can change to default to whatever they want to. But if they're not defaulted, you can change. So that's it with my secondary. So my environmentals are ready in case I need to come back. It saves time. And that's a great feature from the Airbus, which like the 737 doesn't have this. So diffs RIP, we did data, INIT A. F, we did flight plan. We did S, RIP. So R is radio NAVS. So let's say on this departure, so here I have a chart, the McCoy 2 departure out of Orlando. A couple of things we need to be cognizant of is these radials. It says here, radial 090, I should be above 3, and radial 115 should be above 2600, and a 2 DME I should be about 2300. And let's say they change my runway, they make me take off from here, they might vector me to this side. So radio 270, I have to be above 3. These are important things, and you can get in trouble if you don't comply with them, because there's so many airports in the US and have to keep people separated. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the fix info page to insert these things. So what I can do here is I'll say Orlando radio 355, which will take me to Guano, and I can also say put Orlando and some radio to come back. Let's say we'll 50. This is what you can put in there, it's up to you. A lot of people just leave it blank. No ADFs, no NDBs left around here. And also take a look at this. Make sure this matches the runway you're going to be taking off. So just 110.5, and front course is 005. So if you're doing like a low visibility takeoff, you can even push here the LS button if you want to. Say you run into a patch of fog for a few hundred meters and you lose sight of the center line. You could either abort the takeoff, or you can keep a look on that localizer and keep your feet on the pedals and keep that center line. So we're done here with radio NAVS, and I was going to say something about the fix info here. The fix info page, if you click 1 Lima here, you're going to see radio fix info. So to comply with those altitude restrictions, so I'm first going to insert Orlando, and it's the closest one to me. It's only 7 miles away, and I'm going to say radio 090. I want to be at 3,000 or above, radio 115, and as I do this, notice that it starts drawing it on my ND. That's the 115, and that's the 90. And also there's something about 2 miles, so I'm just going to put 2 miles here, and it's going to draw a circle. So remember, at the 2 miles, I have to be above 2,300. On this line, I have to be above 2,600, and on this line, I have to be above 3,000. But then you say, hey, I ran out of space to put radio 270. Well, what you can do is there's 4 fix info pages, so I can go say, well, I want Orlando again, and radio 270. Because I don't really know what runway am I getting. So by drawing all 3 of these, the 2 miles and the 270, I'm covered for if they're gonna take me off from the east side of the airport or the west side. That's fixed info. So we're done with radio NAVS. So diffs RIP, we're gonna go to INIT B. So you might say, well, but this is INIT A. Well, INIT B, see the arrow there? We're gonna go INIT B. And again, and here we're going to insert what our weight, zero fuel weight is. So we got my paperwork, we got 150 passengers. So I have 130,000 pounds, and my CG is 31.1. My block fuel, I'm going to need about 11,000 pounds for this flight. We got plenty of, let's make it 18,000. Paperwork would show that. So we put 18, but you might say, well, we only got 3,260. Why did you put 18? Well, you have to put what you're predicted to have. And a lot of people will say, no, that's dangerous, I'll leave this blank. Well, if you leave this blank, you get no predictions. So go ahead and fill it out. 18,000 is what you're going to have, and then they're going to start filling up your aircraft. So don't be afraid of inserting what you will have so you can have your predictions. Because you put the block, your zero fuel, and your flight plan was ready with the winds, now you have, very, very good predictions. So it's going to take 11,700 pounds, 2 hours and 11. My reserve, I don't need any reserve, so I'm going to put reserve 0. And my final has to be 45 minutes. My alternate is showing 3.2 because I built the entire route. If I had left it blank, just Newark to Boston, this number wouldn't be true. And look what happens. This say I'm short 400 pounds. So this is very important. I put the winds, I build my alternate. Imagine if I didn't build my alternate, and I'll show you that here. So I'm going to go, just for the sake of it, I'm going to go to flight plan, and I'm just going to say we're going Newark direct to Boston. And as I delete this, there's easier and better ways of doing this. I'll just show here what a couple waypoints can make a difference on my prediction. Just because I said I made no difference. Oh, yes, it did make a difference. Now I'm 100 pounds short. So what I'm going to do is call the dispatcher and say, hey, I'm not going until I have 19,000 pounds. And he approves that. Now we're going to 19,000 pounds. I have only 600 pounds extra in 8 minutes. And my landing weight, you want to make sure that's below or maximum landing weight. So now it's time to start fueling the aircraft up. So kind of ignore this because this is only works on FS Labs. I'm going to say 19,000 pounds of fuel. And let's say the fueler calls you and say, hey, fuel is completed. Good practice for you to do. Just come under fuel and make sure they filled it up correctly. So you want to see that your tips are full before they put fuel on the right and on the left, and your center is blank. Temperatures look good, and pumps are already on. Now, if your airline doesn't let you turn the pumps on during fueling, this would be a time for you to do it. So check the pumps are on, check the fuel load, and make sure you go to your INIT B and that number still matches, which it does. 19, he's got 18.9, so I can even come here and update to 18. And my predictions are going to run again. And it's going to be a short taxi today, but it's only going to take 500 pounds. That shortened my extra time and only got 6 minutes, so this is tight on fuel. Alright, so we're done with INIT B. Now it's performance. Airbus says that you have to put the predictions. So these are not my final numbers yet. This is just what I predicted I was going to have with 150 passengers. But Airbus says you still put your performance based on what you're supposed to have. So I pick up my charts, and we're going to talk about this later, performance, how you come up with your V speeds. And flaps 1 was the best, so it's going to be here 145, 145, 152, my V2, and looks what happens on my FCU. So right now on my FCU, I'm going to circle it here. There's no yellow ball. You see a yellow ball here, but nothing on the speed. Look what happens when I insert V2. That ball is in there. Okay. And we're going to talk about those circles. Alright, transition altitude is 18,000 feet. And reduction acceleration is different. So let's say it's about 1,000 feet above elevation. So we'll put 1090 to reduce and accelerate. And we're going to take off flaps 1. And I still don't have my trimmable horizontal stabilizer, so I leave it blank. And since we were light today, or actually I have extra performance, we can assume the temperature is 52 Celsius. Now, this is just a prediction. So you might ask, well, why does Airbus want you to fill this out and then redo it? Well, you have something to compare it with. So let's say you got 145, 145, 152. In your final numbers, now you got a V1 of 120, 120, and 135. Something is really far off. Because you're going to see with the final numbers, this is going to change very little, 1, 2, 3 knots up or down. So this is their point. So let's say now the door is about to get closed, and then I get my final paperwork, and it says, hey, you got a little bit more passengers than predicted. Your final zero fuel is now 130.5, and your zero fuel, the prediction was 30. We kind of just put it as a placeholder. So the correct thing would have been to, even though you don't know, you leave it at 30 or so, and then when you get your final numbers, you update it. So I got 130.5, and the CG was actually really close to the prediction. You still got extra time, so you come into performance and you recalculate your numbers. So the final numbers, as we look at the paperwork, is 146, 146, 153, and we lost 2 degrees. And our terminal horizontal stabilizer 0.2 up. So very close to what the prediction was, and I think this is Airbus rationale of inserting the prediction and then the final. And that's it for FMS.